Good evening. Welcome to, or good morning. Welcome to the International Great to Black Read Aloud Day. And it is day 13, and it's science fiction. Now, when I did these days and I decided to sort of scramble them, I did not realize I had put science fiction to follow behind fantasy, but it works very well. And so we're okay with it. Um, and so yesterday our selection was Mumbo Jumbo, which was fantasy. And today we have a selection here for day 13, which is science fiction. And so, by the way, my name is LD Robinson, and I am the founder of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. And so, what we do here is we give voice to words written by Black people, all written by Black people all around the world. And we're doing that every day this month and other days throughout the year. So, what you need to do is make sure that you go over and subscribe to our website so that you can stay in touch with us and we can stay in touch with you about what we're going to do throughout the year so that you can join us. We want you to read along with us. And because that's part of what we're here doing at the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. We want you to read from all the various genres and topics and subjects that we'll have throughout the year. It's a little late here in the United States, and that is because today was Super Bowl Sunday. And so Super Bowl ended approximately an hour or so ago. And so we are here. And our selection for today, which is um, day 13, it is science fiction. And I need to do something like really quick. And let me take care of that. And we are going to uh, get this done. And we're going to talk about our selection for today, which I believe you will like because it is a great selection today. And it is a classic as well, which in the science fiction genre is something to behold. And so, our author today, while deceased, her books are still being read all around. And so, we want to share that with you. And I am making a slight adjustment here for our screen. And we will commence to reading our selection for today and give you something to think about. I always think science fiction is very interesting. Um, there's a lot because there's imagination that has to happen, very much like fantasy. And but there are all these kind of alternate universes that have to be created and done. And I think it takes a great amount of imagination to do such a thing. And I am duly impressed by authors who are able um, to create total names and other things, universes, levels to the universes, all those things that they happen to do in fantasy and science fiction. And so we want to make sure we give due diligence to what is happening today. So, our selection for today, science fiction, is Dawn by Octavia E. Butler. And it is the first book in her Exogenesis trilogy. And so we're going to read from chapter 5, which is part of the section called The Womb. And I was going to read the family because I think that, read the first one from the family because I think that is very interesting. But I think maybe a little, slightly bit of context would, is this needs to be done for that chapter. So we're going to read, we're going to read chapter 5. And this is from The Womb. And here is our selection for today. It is Dawn by Octavia E. Butler. who was an award-winning author. And so we are excited about certainly about our selection today. So let's get started. Chapter 5 from Dawn, the Exogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler. And this is from The Womb, and this is chapter 5. She made him wait until she had washed the orange juice from her hands. Then he walked over to one of the walls and touched it with some of his longer head tentacles. A dark spot appeared on the wall where he made contact. It became a deepening, widening indentation, then a hole through which Lilith could see color and light: green, red, orange, yellow. There had been little color in her world since her capture. Her own skin, her blood, within the pale walls of her prison, that was all. Everything else was some shade of white or gray. Even her food had been colorless until the banana. Now, here was color and what appeared to be sunlight. There was space, vast space. The hole in the wall widened as though it were flesh rippling aside, slowly writhing. She was both fascinated and repelled. Is it alive? She asked. Yes, he said. She had beaten it, kicked it, clawed it, tried to bite it. It had been smooth, tough, impenetrable, but slightly giving like the bed and table. It had felt like plastic, cool beneath her hands. What is it? She asked. Flesh, more like mine than yours. Different from mine too, though. It's the ship. You're kidding. Your ship is alive? Yes, come out. The hole in the wall had grown large enough for them to step through. He ducked his head and took the necessary step. She started to follow him, then stopped. There was so much space out there. The colors she had seen were thin, hair-like leaves and round, coconut-sized fruit, apparently in different stages of development. All hung from great branches that overshadowed the new exit. Beyond them was a broad, open field with scattered trees, impossibly huge trees, distant hills, and a bright, sunless ivory sky. There was enough strangeness to the trees and the sky to stop her from imagining that she was on Earth. There were people moving around in the distance, and there were black German shepherd-sized animals that were too far away for her to see them clearly, though even in the distance, the animals seemed to have too many legs. 6, 10. The creatures seemed to be grazing. Lilith, come out, Jadia said. She took a step backward, away from all the alien vastness. The isolation room that she had hated for so long suddenly seemed safe and comforting. Back into your cage, Lilith? Jadia asked softly. She stared at him through the hole, realizing at once he was trying to provoke her, make her overcome her fear. It would not have worked if he had not been so right. She was retreating into her cage, like a zoo animal that had been shut up for so long that the cage had become home. She made herself step up to the opening and then, teeth clenched, stepped through. Outside, she stood beside him and drew a long, shuddering breath. She turned her head, looked at the room, then turned away quickly, resisting an impulse to flee back to it. He took her hand and led her away. When she looked back a second time, the hole was closing and she could see that what she had come out of was actually a huge tree. Her room could not have taken more than a tiny fraction of its interior. The tree had grown from what appeared to be ordinary, pale brown, sandy soil. Its lower limbs were heavily laden with fruit. The rest of it looked almost ordinary, except for its size. The trunk was bigger around than some office buildings she remembered, and it seemed to touch the ivory sky. How tall was it? How much of it served as a building? Was everything inside that room alive, she asked. Everything except some of the visible plumbing fixtures, Jadia said. Even the food you ate was produced from the fruit of one of the branches growing outside. It was designed to meet your nutritional needs. And to taste like cotton and paste, she muttered. I hope I won't have to eat any more of that stuff. You won't, but it's kept you very healthy. Your diet in particular encouraged your body not to grow cancers while your genetic inclination to grow them was corrected. It has been corrected then? Yes. Correcting genes have been inserted into your cells, and your cells have accepted and replicated them. Now you won't grow cancers by accident. That, she thought, was an odd qualification, but she let it pass for the moment. When will you send me back to Earth? You couldn't survive there now, especially not alone. You haven't sent any of us back yet? Your group will be the first. Oh, this had not occurred to her, that she and others like her would be guinea pigs trying to survive on an Earth that must have greatly changed. How is it there now? Wild. Forests, mountains, deserts, plains, great oceans. It's a rich world, clean of dangerous radiation in most places. The greatest diversity of animal life is in the seas, but there are a number of small animals thriving on land. Insects, worms, amphibians, reptiles, small mammals. There is no doubt your people can live there. When? That will not be hurried. You have a very long life ahead of you, Lilith, and you have work to do here. You said something about that once before. What work? You'll live with my family for a while. Live as one of us as much as possible. We'll teach you your work. But what work? You'll awaken a small group of humans, all English speaking, and help them learn to deal with us. You'll teach them the survival skills we teach you. Your people will all be from what you call civilized societies. Now they'll have to learn to live in forests, build their own shelters, and raise their own food, all without machines or outside help. Will you forbid us machines? She asked uncertainly. Of course not, but we won't give them to you either. We'll give you hand tools, simple equipment, and food until you begin to make the things you need and grow your own crops. We've already armed you against the deadlier microorganisms. Beyond that, you'll have to fend for yourself, avoiding poisonous plants and animals and creating what you need. How can you teach us to survive on our own world? How can you know enough about it or about us? How can we not? We've helped your world restore itself. We've studied your bodies, your thinking, your literature, your historical records, your many cultures. We know more of what you're capable of than you do. Or they thought they did. If they really had had 250 years to study, maybe they were right. You've inoculated us against diseases? She asked to be sure she had understood. No. But you said, we've strengthened your immune system, increased your resistance to disease in general. How? Something else done to our genes? He said nothing. She let the silence lengthen until she was certain he would not answer. This was one more thing they had done to her body without her consent, and supposedly for her own good. We used to treat animals that way, she muttered bitterly. What? He said. We did things to them. Inoculations, surgery, isolation, all for their own good. We wanted them healthy and protected, sometimes so we could eat them later. His tentacles did not flatten to his body, but she got the impression he was laughing at her. Doesn't it frighten you to say things like that to me? He asked. No, she said. It scares me to have people doing things to me that I don't understand. You've been given health. The Ulioi have seen to it that you'll have a chance to live on your earth, not just die on it. He would not say any more on the subject. She looked around at the huge trees, some with great branching multiple trunks and foliage, like long green hair. Some of their hair seemed to move, though there was no wind. She sighed. The trees too then, tentacled like the people, long, slender, green tentacles. Jadia? His own tentacles swept toward her in a way she still found disconcerting, though it was only his way of giving her his attention, or signaling her that she had it. I'm willing to learn what you have to teach me, she said, but I don't think I'm the right teacher for others. There were so many humans who already knew how to live in the wilderness, so many who could probably teach you a little more. Those are the ones you ought to be talking to. We have talked to them. They will have to be especially careful because of some of the things they know aren't true anymore. There are new plants, mutations of old ones, and additions we've made. Some things that used to be edible are lethal now. Some things are deadly only if they aren't prepared properly. Some of the animal life isn't as harmless as it apparently once was. Your earth is still your earth, but between the efforts of your people to destroy it and ours to restore it, it has changed. She nodded, wondering why she could absorb his words so easily. Perhaps because she had known even before her capture that the world she had known was dead. She had already absorbed that loss to the degree that she could. There must be ruins, she said softly. There were. We've destroyed many of them. She seized his arm without thinking. You destroyed them? There were things left, and you destroyed them? You'll begin again. We'll put you in areas that are clean of radioactivity in history. You will become something other than you were. And you think destroying what was left of our cultures will make us better? No, only different. She realized suddenly that she was facing him, grasping his arm in a grip that should have been painful to him. It was painful to her. She let go of him and his arm swung to his side in the oddly dead way in which his limbs seemed to move when he was not using them for a specific purpose. You were wrong, she said. She could not sustain her anger. She could not look at his tentacled alien face and sustain anger, but she had to say the words. You destroyed what wasn't yours, she said. You completed an insane act. You are still alive, he said. She walked beside him, silently ungrateful. Knee-high tufts of thick, fleshy leaves or tentacles grew from the soil. He stepped carefully to avoid them, which made her want to kick them. Only the fact that her feet were bare stopped her. Then she saw, to her disgust, that the leaves twisted or contracted out of the way if she stepped near one, like plants made of snake-sized night crawlers. They seemed to be rooted to the ground. Did that make them plants? What are those things? She asked, gesturing toward one with a foot. Part of the ship. They can be induced to produce a liquid we and our animals enjoy. It wouldn't be good for you. Are they plant or animal? They aren't separate from the ship. Well, is the ship plant or animal? Both and more. Whatever that meant. Is it intelligent? It can be. That part of it is dormant now. But even so, the ship can be chemically induced to perform more functions than you would have the patience to listen to. It does a great deal on its own without monitoring. He fell silent for a moment, his tentacles smooth against his body. Then he continued. The human doctor used to say it loved us. There is an affinity, but it's biological, a strong symbiotic relationship. We serve the ship's needs, and it serves ours. It would die without us, and we would be planet-bound without it. For us, that would eventually mean death. Where did you get it? We grew it. You or your ancestors? My ancestors grew this one. I'm helping to grow another. Now? Why? We'll divide here. We're like mature asexual animals in that way, but we divide into three. Denso to stay on Earth until it is ready to leave generations from now. Toat to leave in this ship, and Akje to leave in the new ship. Lilith looked at him. Some of you will go to Earth with us? I will, and my family and others, all Denso. Why? This is how we grow, how we've always grown. We'll take the knowledge of ship growing with us so that our descendants will be able to leave when the time comes. We couldn't survive as a people if we were always confined to one ship or one world. Will you take seeds or something? We'll take the necessary materials. And those who leave, Toad and Akshay, you'll never see them again? I won't. At some time in the distant future, a group of my descendants might meet a group of theirs. I hope that will happen. Both will have divided many times. They'll have acquired much to give to one another. They probably won't even know one another. They'll remember this division as mythology if they remember it at all. No, they'll recognize one another. Memory of a division is passed on biologically. I remember every one that has taken place in my family since we left the home world. Do you remember your home world itself? I mean, could you get back to it if you wanted to? Go back? His tentacles smooth again. No, Lilith. That's the one direction that's closed to us. This is our home world now. He gestured around them from what seemed to be a glowing ivory sky to what seemed to be brown soil. There were many more of the huge trees around them now, and she could see people going in and out of the trunks. Naked, gray, Oankali, tentacled all over, some with 2 arms, some alarmingly with 4, but none with anything she recognized as sexual organs. Perhaps some of the tentacles and extra arms served a sexual function. She examined every cluster of Oankali for humans, but saw none. At least none of the Oankali came near her or seemed to pay attention to her. Some of them, she noticed with a shudder, had tentacles covering every inch of their heads all around. Others had tentacles in odd, irregular patches. None had quite Jediah's human-like arrangement, tentacles placed to resemble eyes, ears, hair. Had Jediah's work with humans been suggested by the chance arrangement of his head tentacles? Or had he been altered surgically or in some other way to make him seem more human? This is the way I have always looked, he said when she asked, and he would not say any more on the subject. Minutes later, they passed a tree and she reached out to touch its smooth, slightly giving bark, like the walls of her isolation room, but darker colored. These trees are all buildings, aren't they? She said. These structures are not trees, he told her. They're part of the ship. They support its shape, provide necessities for us: food, oxygen, waste disposal, transport conduits, storage and living space, work areas, many things. They passed very near Pavel and Kali, who stood so close together their head tentacles writhed and tangled together. She could see their bodies in clear detail. Like the others she had seen, these were naked. Jediah had probably worn clothing only as a courtesy to her. For that, she was grateful. The growing number of people they passed near began to disturb her, and she caught herself drawing closer to Jediah as though for protection. Surprised and embarrassed, she made herself move away from him. He apparently noticed. Lilith? He said very quietly. What? Silence. I'm all right, she said. It's just so many people and so strange to me. Normally, we don't wear anything. I'd guess that. You'll be free to wear clothing or not as you like. I'll wear it. She hesitated. Are there any other humans awake where you're taking me? None. She hugged herself tightly, arms across her chest, more isolation. To her surprise, he extended his hand. To her greater surprise, she took it and was grateful. Why can't you go back to your home world? She asked. It still exists, doesn't it? He seemed to think for a moment. We left it so long ago. I doubt that it does still exist. Why did you leave? It was a womb. The time had come for us to be born. She smiled sadly. There were humans who thought that way, right up to the moment the missiles were fired. People who believed space was our destiny. I believed it myself. I know. Though from what the Uli have told me, your people could not have fulfilled that destiny. Their own bodies handicapped them. There are bodies? What do you mean? We've been into space. There's nothing about our bodies that prevent it. Your bodies are fatally flawed. The Uli perceived this at once. At first, it was very hard for them to touch you. Then you became an obsession with them. Now it's hard for them to let you alone. What are you talking about? You have a mismatched pair of genetic characteristics. Either alone would have been useful, would have aided the survival of your species, but the two together are lethal. It was only a matter of time before they destroyed you. She shook her head. If you're saying we were genetically programmed to do what we did, blow ourselves up, no. Your people's situation was more like your own with the cancer my relative cured. The cancer was small. The human doctor said you probably would have recovered and been well even if humans had discovered it and removed it at that stage. You might have lived the rest of your life free of it, though she said she would have wanted to check you regularly. With my family history, she wouldn't have had to tell me that last. Yes, but what if you hadn't recognized the significance of your family history? What if we or the humans hadn't discovered the cancer? It was malignant, I assume. Of course. Then I suppose it would eventually have killed me. Yes, it would have. And your people were in a similar position. If they had been able to perceive and solve their problem, they might have been able to avoid destruction. Of course, they too would have to remember to re-examine themselves periodically. But what was the problem? You said we had two incompatible characteristics. What were they? Jediah made a rustling noise that could have been a sigh, but that did not seem to come from his mouth or throat. You are intelligent, he said. That's the newer of the two characteristics, and the one you might have to put to work to save yourselves. You are potentially one of the most intelligent species we've found, though your focus is different from ours. Still, you had a good start in the life sciences and even in genetics. What's the second characteristic? You are hierarchical. That's the older and more entrenched characteristic. We saw it in your closest animal relatives and in your most distant ones. It's a terrestrial characteristic. When human intelligence served it instead of guiding it, when human intelligence did not even acknowledge it as a problem, but took pride in it or did not notice it at all. The rattling sounded again. That was like ignoring cancer. I think your people did not realize what a dangerous thing they were doing. I don't think most of us thought of it as a genetic problem. I didn't. I'm not sure I do now. Her feet had begun to hurt from walking so long on the uneven ground. She wanted to end both the walk and the conversation. The conversation made her uncomfortable. Jediah sounded almost plausible. Yes, he said. Intelligence does enable you to deny facts you dislike, but your denial doesn't matter. A cancer growing in someone's body will go on growing in spite of denial. And a complex combination of genes that work together to make you intelligent, as well as hierarchical, will still handicap you whether you acknowledge it or not. I just don't believe it's that simple, just a bad gene or two. It isn't simple, and it isn't a gene or two. It's many, the result of a tangled combination of factors that only begins with genes. He stopped, let his head tentacles drift toward a rough circle of huge trees. The tentacles seemed to point. My family lives there, he said. She stood still, now truly frightened. No one will touch you without your consent, he said, and I'll stay with you for as long as you like. She was comforted by his words and ashamed of needing comfort. How had she become so dependent on him? She shook her head. The answer was obvious. He wanted her dependent. That was the reason for her continued isolation from her kind. She was to be dependent on Owen Colley, dependent and trusting. To hell with that. Tell me what you want of me, she demanded abruptly, and what you want of my people. His tentacles swung to examine her. I've told you a great deal. Tell me the price, Jediah. What do you want? What will your people take from us in return for having saved us? All his tentacles seemed to hang limp, giving him an almost comical droop. Lilith found no humor in it. You'll live, he said. Your people will live. You'll have your world again. We already have much of what we want of you. Your cancer in particular. What? The Ulio are intensely interested in it. It suggests abilities we have never been able to trade for successfully before. Abilities from cancer? Yes. The Uloi see great potential in it, so the trade has already been useful. You're welcome to it. But before, when I asked, you said you trade yourselves? Yes, we trade the essence of ourselves, our genetic material for yours. Lilith frowned, then shook her head. How? I mean, you could be talking about interbreeding. Of course not, his tentacles smoothed. What do we do what you call genetic engineering? We know you have begun to do it yourselves a little, but it's foreign to you. We do it naturally. We must do it. It renews us, enables us to survive as an evolving species instead of specializing ourselves into extinction or stagnation. We all do it naturally to some degree, she said warily. Sexual reproduction. The Eloy do it for us. They have special organs for it. They can do it for you too. Make sure of a good, viable gene mix. It is part of our reproduction, but it's much more deliberate than what any mated pair of humans have managed so far. We're not hierarchical, you see. We never were. But we are powerfully acquisitive. We acquire new life, seek it, investigate it, manipulate it, sort it, use it. We carry the drive to do this in a minuscule cell within a cell, a tiny organelle within every cell of our bodies. Do you understand me? I understand your words. Your meaning, though, is as alien to me as you are. That's the way we perceive your hierarchical drives at first. He paused. One of the meanings of Kali is gene trader. Another is that organelle, the essence of ourselves, the origin of ourselves. Because of that organelle, the Uli can perceive DNA and manipulate it precisely. And they do this inside their bodies? Yes. And now they're doing something with cancer cells inside their bodies? Experimenting, yes. That sounds a long way from safe. They're like children now, talking and talking about possibilities. What possibilities? Regeneration of lost limbs, controlled malleability. Future Oankali may be much less frightening to potential trade partners if they're able to reshape themselves and look more like partners before the trade. Even increased longevity, though compared to what you're used to, we're very long lived now. All that from cancer. Perhaps. We listen to the Uloi when they stop talking so much. That's when we find out what our next generations will be like. You leave all that to them, they decide. They show us the tested possibilities. We all decide. That has been part from chapter 5 in the section of the book called The Womb. And our selection for today has been Dawn. It is Science Fiction Day. Day 13, and our selection for today has been Dawn by Octavia E. Butler, who was an award-winning author. She won the Hugo and Nebula Award for her series Kindred and Parable of the Sower, which is a very popular book. And so we want you to enjoy reading with us all the different genres that are out here, all the different types of literature that Black people around the world contribute to. Making reading fun, making it exciting, making it diverse. And I mean, it's pretty diverse when you're able to come up with whole different cultures and universes and all those things as part of writing. And so we want to encourage you to write and to read. And let's read aloud with the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. We want you to follow us online at Black Read Aloud and continue to tune in every day. And can't really say what time, but every day this month as we are selling Black history here in the United States of America. And wherever you are in the world, we hope that you are reading and that you are that you consider literacy is a legacy, as our partners do at F.R.E.S.H Book Festivals. And we will see you tomorrow for what will be day 14. And our day 14, we want to remind you of what that is tomorrow. And I think you all probably know, because worldwide there's this day that people love. And tomorrow is Love and Romance Day here at the International Great Black Read Aloud. And I believe that many of you will have something that you can read concerning love and romance, because it is something that we all like, right? Tomorrow is day 14. And it is Love and Romance Day. And so we want you to pull out your books and maybe pull out a love note or something like that and read aloud with us tomorrow here at the International Great Black Read Aloud Day 2022. I'm LD Robinson, and I am your reader for today, and your host for today, and your host for the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. So here at TIGBRAD, we want to say good night. We want to say good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. And we will see you later today for day 14, which is Love and Romance. We'll see you. Have a good night.